I guess I have to unmute myself. If I had $1 for every time that happened to me or anybody else for that matter in the online world, I would have lots of money. Uh, uh, that's just funny. It's one of the things. There's actually a funny thing. It's a conference calls in real life, and it's one that's they do it in a boardroom, and it's literally conference calls that they do together, but in a boardroom. But it's like when you're on the phone with people, it's absolutely hilarious. By the way, when you watch it, so I'll try to find that link a little bit later and send that over your guys' way. But anyways, I digress. Welcome to the 6 Profit Principles webinar with myself, Thaddeus Tanya, as well as Bruce Sitler from Action Furnace. We'll get going here in a second on that. I'll give a little bit more time for some people to join up. I'm pretty excited to dive into this topic in particular. I know it's one that a lot of people run Google Ads, and they want to make sure that they run their PPC profitable. It's one of the questions that comes up. I mean, a lot of questions come up. Don't get me wrong. One of the questions that comes up a lot in Facebook groups is this question about Google Ads and how to make sure you run them profitably, and what budget should I have, and what should I do here, and what should I do there, and all of these things that go involved in it. It is very simplistic yet complex at the same time. But what I think that I love about these profit principles that we're going to get into is that Bruce breaks them down in a way that is easily digestible and understandable, that is relatable to not just a heating, cooling, or plumbing or electrical business, really any business for that matter, to be able to really dive down and drill it into understanding the idea of what makes your PPC campaign profitable. Okay. So without further ado, we're going to jump into it now. I am live, by the way, right now. It is 1:33 p.m. On April 28th. I almost said May 28th. They're on April 28th. However, I don't really like the bait and switch here in terms of that. Bruce and I actually sat down earlier to record some content. We ended up recording this in its entirety. Like, oh man, this is like a dang near webinar style. And so I'm actually going to play the video of when Bruce and I sat down together and did the profit principles. At the end, I'm going to come back on. We can do some Q&A. We can ask some questions. Did you guys have anything that wasn't made crystal clear inside of that? So that's going to be the format of there. Of course, what we do and why we're sitting down with this, and we'll allude to it a little bit in the video. So I'm with On Purpose Media. We do websites, SEO, Google Ads for home service businesses, primary heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical contractors. Bruce happens to run a very big outfit here in Calgary, and the opportunity to sit down and do it in person is obviously one of those ones. And we didn't really want to rely on technological glitches if we're going to be in person doing it live. And so we sat down and recorded. But it's actually 3 locations. They're around $50 million per year, so they're a pretty big business, and they invest upwards of over 7 figures a year on PPC. So that's why we wanted to get together to talk a little bit about what he's experienced and what we see on our end to be able to really help you level up your Google Ads game. So without further ado, I am going to hopefully not mess this up. I'm going to add this to the stage.
Here with On Purpose Media, and I'm sitting across the table from one Bruce. Actually, don't even know how to pronounce your last name, but Sitler, Bruce Sitler,
like the hockey player,
like Sitler from the hockey. You mean
like Daryl Sitler? That's long before your.
That was long before my time. I was thinking the Sutters from biking, but different name. So, anyways, Bruce is the one of the owners of Action Furnace. They are around a $50 million per year outfit here in Calgary. They also have 2 other locations in 2 other cities, and they spend over $1 million per year on Google Ads. He's been doing it Google Ads since 2005, 2006. He's figured out a lot along the ways, and one of the things that he actually realized early on in his career is 6 profit principles. He's refined these over the years, and I really want to unpack these because I think a lot of people, a lot of contractors don't quite understand it. I know myself, sitting across the table from him once down in Okotoks having a coffee, he explained these, and it's like, dang, light bulb moment went off in my brain from my business and my marketing company. So I wanted to get these to everybody as well. So there we are.
Excellent.
All
well,
right.
Happy to discuss Google Ads with you, Thad.
Yeah, Google Ads. Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having on. And so the profit principles, and we're going to go straight to the meat and potatoes, guys. Yeah. And instead of trying to do the whole, tell us your story, blah blah blah. Just know he's been around the block for a few times in doing what he does inside the business itself. So, profit principles. Yeah. I think there's 6 of them. Well, I know there's 6 of them. You've come up with them. You've educated me. Now let's educate everybody else. So let's talk a little bit about what the profit principles are.
Sure. Well, it's basically an outline of a strategy and a mindset that you need to have in order to be successful, running Google Ads. So understanding, what Google Ads is good at, what it's not good at, how you should use it, the tactics you should use, the mindset, how to budget. Those are sort of the basis of the 6 profit principles. And we can go ahead and list them and discuss each one of them one at a time. If you want to introduce them, we can.
Sure. So profit principle number 1, and I think I'll read off all 6 of them, and then let's go back to number 1. So profit principle number 1, understand how and when profits are made in your business. Profit principle number 2 is be flexible with your budget. Profit principle number 3, don't overbook. Profit principle number 4 is all jobs are not created equal. Number 5 is you're not spending your own money. That's a good concept. Principle number 6 is how many jobs should search engine marketing fill? I said I was going to search engine marketing. You might hear us talk search. We're talking about search engine marketing, otherwise known as pay-per-click, otherwise known as Google Ads, otherwise known as Google Ads, otherwise known as paid search. Variety of different ways that it can go. Just know that the topic today, if you hear us say search, we're talking paid search, whether that's PPC, Bing.
Yes. Facebook even.
Facebook even. That's just you're paying for people to search. Paid search. So, all right, let's break down what profit principle number 1 means. Understand how and when profits are made in your business.
Yeah. So just like every business, the home services business is no different. You have a certain amount of overhead that you need to cover every day, and once you've covered that overhead, all the jobs after that become incrementally more profitable. So once you've covered your overhead, let's say you have 4 or 5 jobs left on your schedule, those 4 or 5 jobs, the gross profit dollars you create with those last jobs basically become your net profit. So understanding that principle that first we need to cover our overhead, then all the extra jobs you do that day or that week become your profit margin. So really understanding that concept, that filling those last few jobs every day become critically important to your bottom line. If those jobs go unfilled, you're giving away net profit at that point, assuming you've covered your overhead for that day. So it's a very important principle to understand, especially when it comes to paid search, because paid search is very good at filling those last marginal jobs of the day or the week. And they can become very profitable if you've already covered your overhead. So that's the first principle you need to understand to really get the most out of paid search.
Right, and to the example that I always like to give to people when it comes to this is saying, okay, well, let's just use your capacity is 10 for the day. I'm making this up too. You use your numbers. You can go capacity of 100, really depending on your business. But same principle, it's just different numbers. And so if your capacity is 10, and let's just play pretend is that your break-even point on that day is 6 jobs. So that's your overhead. You're covered your overhead. Anything your 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th calls are your money calls. You still have to have your cost of goods sold. Let's just say you have a 50% cost of goods sold or gross profit. You have a 30% overhead on there. You have a 20% net. Random numbers should probably be following along those lines in your business anyways, give or take a little bit. So if you're 6 calls, well, you're making your 20% net. But your last 4 calls, you're actually making 50% net.
Correct.
And that's the part that I think a lot of people miss.
Correct. So every job that goes unfilled on your schedule, once you've hit your break-even point, 50% of that is net profit, more or less, and you're missing that opportunity. So keeping that schedule full has to be paramount in your strategy with search engine marketing or paid search, whatever you want to call it.
Well, because again, it's the numbers. So if you have, again, let's just say $1,000 blended ticket, and I'm going to make these numbers up. Now, if you have a $500 blended ticket, you probably should look at your operations, and maybe we'll talk about it at the end. But if you have a $1,000 blended ticket on that, well, you know that you're going to be spending $500, but you're making $500 on those last calls. So would you actually want to spend a little bit more to make those? I know I would. I'm like, okay, great. If I'm going to make $200 on a call, but instead I'm going to make $500 on this call, what if I spent $200 to $300 to be able to get another $200 to $300?
Yeah, correct. So the amount you pay for those last marginal jobs, those last jobs to fill your capacity, become less and less relevant. I mean, of course, you want to pay as little as possible, But even if you have to pay a little bit more for those jobs, because there's such a high net profit margin available for those jobs, you should be willing to spend a little bit more to fill that capacity at the end of the day, at the end of the week. So yes, you need to be a little bit flexible in your budget and be prepared to spend a little bit more to fill those last calls of the day. And that's one of our profit principles as well, is to be flexible with your budget.
Right. And that leads perfectly into profit principle number 2, is be flexible with your budget. Walk us through what that means.
Yeah, so if you just have a very set, rigid a budget that you're willing to pay per job or in total, you could potentially be missing out on those marginal jobs, those very profitable last remaining jobs of the day. So if you set a maximum, I'm going to pay for this job of $50 or $100, and those jobs go unfilled, think about the profit you're foregoing. But if you maybe were just a little bit more flexible and maybe you were prepared to spend $60 or $110 or just a little bit more, you might have been able to fill your schedule. So by having a very rigid budget and not being flexible, there's a potential you're missing out on those last jobs, your most profitable jobs. So sometimes you have to pay a little bit more. Not always, but sometimes you have to pay a little bit more for those last remaining jobs, and you should be prepared to do that.
And here's I think some people probably have the tough time with this, and it's like, I got my budget, it's 10 grand a month, 20 grand, 50, whatever the number is. My budget's 10 grand a month. Well, that divided by 30 days is $300 per day. I don't want to spend more than that.
Right. My question would be why? Why? Why is $300 the magic number? Why is $10,000 a month the magic number? What's it based on? I mean, your budget should be whatever it takes to fill my schedule within reason, as long as the jobs are profitable. The total amount I spend to do that is irrelevant. It's just a number. So fill your schedule as long as they're profitable, and you're not trying to fill too much of your schedule. The numbers will work, and you should just spend what you need to spend in order to fill your schedule. Right. You will be profitable.
Well, and here's, I think the part that I think people miss on this set number per day or whatever. Well, okay, well, if you're in the southern US and it's the middle of the summer and it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit, I know for us Canadians, that's hot, we're gonna melt. But let's just, I mean, we know that most people are listening to this, they're Fahrenheit. For those that are in Celsius, it snows like 40, really hot. So, but the thing is they call them for an AC repair call, right? And it's hot. They're not going to wait more than 2 days.
Right.
So if your capacity is full, why are you even going to spend $300 per day to be able to turn that lead over to some other company, right? And so it's almost like moving the budget up and down and knowing that, okay, I need to look at it more holistically from my business. And if your capacity is full for an entire week, well, guess what?
Why are you spending money at all? Right. So that's also one of our profit principles, which is don't overbook.
Yes.
I mean, if your schedule is filling up nicely, organically, through your other marketing efforts, you're booked out for a day, the phone's ringing, why would you spend any money on search? Or so understanding that and being able to turn your budgets off, being prepared and able to turn your campaigns off is also vitally important. You don't want to spend $200 or $100 for a job that you can't run. So that's a very important principle as well, which is don't overbook. Don't buy jobs you don't need. So yes, of course, if you're booked out for a couple of days in service and it's hot or cold out, you're wasting your money. Yeah.
So that was profit principle number 3. I'm glad you picked up on how I was going to lead you into that perfectly. Is there anything in terms of like impacting on profits that you might want to add into that profit principle number 3?
Well, sure. I mean, obviously, why would you spend money for jobs you don't need? I mean, the minute you're doing that, you're becoming less and less profitable with each job you're booking that you can't run, or they cancel, or they find somebody sooner. So finding that sweet spot of how far you want to be booked out kind of depends on your market, the time of year, how hot or cold it is. I mean, for some services, people will wait. They'll wait for a tune-up or a maintenance or a duct cleaning. Sure, they'll wait a week or 2 weeks or even a month sometimes. We're booked out sometimes 2 months in that department. For service, if it's super hot out, nobody's waiting 3 or 4 days to get their air conditioner fixed. So if you're booked out that far, the last thing you want to do is spend money on search and get a bunch of jobs you can't run. So don't overbook. Don't get booked out too far. If you are, if the schedule's filling up nicely without having to spend money on ads, great, let it do that. Why would you pay for an ad? Why would you pay for a job and book it out 2 days when it looks like your schedule is going to fill on its own?
Yeah.
So understanding how the jobs are coming in, that you can fill your schedule, without spending money, that's a very important principle. Having a feel for how quickly the schedule is filling up.
Now, and this also transcends not just AC. I mean, like furnaces, right? I mean, like last week, Fahrenheit and Celsius were equal here in Canada with the wind chill minus 40 cold. So like there's the furnace season 2 where, I mean, if it's minus 40 with the wind chill, I'm not waiting more than a couple hours for somebody.
Correct.
Right. You need to be
So if your schedule's booked out a day or two in service, why are you spending? You don't need to spend any money.
There's garage doors too. Like if a garage door is an opening or closing, same thing. Their vehicle's stuck inside. They need to open it. It's going to be the same process. The principle. If their hot water tank is gone, maybe you can wait a few days. I mean, I shower cold at the end of it for like 2 to 3 minutes, and it comes out at 4.9 degrees Celsius, which is like 39 Fahrenheit, out of our taps, and so that's pretty cold. But the other part, when you look at this, we talked a little bit about some of the different jobs that we've had. In profit principle number 4, not all jobs are created equal.
Yeah. So very important principle. If you've only got a few jobs left on your schedule to fill for today, you obviously want to fill those jobs with the most profitable, highest margin, highest gross ticket jobs you can find. Search is very good at that. You can get very, very focused on where you want these jobs to come from geographically. Where's the older equipment. You can get very specific on the search terms, and so you can, all things being equal, and you only need a few jobs to fill that day, you can get very specific and very targeted of the type of calls that you want. Search is very good at that. So you don't want to just take any random call. And that's where search can really play a vital role in finding the right job for those last couple of jobs today or tomorrow. And we're not going to take the first call that comes along. We don't want just any call from anywhere. We're going to get very specific and very focused of the type of job that we want to fill out our schedule. So yeah, not all jobs are created equal. I mean, if you've got 2 spots left on your schedule today, do you want to run a warranty call on a 2-year-old piece of equipment that isn't yours? Or do you want to go to a replacement opportunity on a piece of equipment that's 17 years old and the guy says, there's smoke coming out of my furnace or my...
You're prioritizing that one.
Right. So you obviously want to target the high value replacement opportunities when you can, and especially if you only need a few of them. Search is excellent for that.
Well, and the other part, I think people miss this, and I've been talking a lot about this, is that you can break down a person, you take 100 people in a room, and this, by the way, transcends not just our industry, but 3% of people at any given time know they have a problem and they're actively seeking out a solution and they want to buy it now. 17% of people know they have a problem and they're actively seeking out a solution. They're information gathering. They're not quite ready to buy. They want to gather that information. Another 20% of people know they have a problem. They're solution agnostic. They don't even know there's one out there. It's like, I got a problem. I heard a clicking noise in my furnace. It's still running. Whatever. Good to go. Well, my house is warm, or their AC and their house is cold. Another 60% of the people, though, they don't know they have a problem and they don't know they have a solution. So this goes back to that point of advertising to that 3% because they want to go now.
Correct.
Yes. The other part that I liked, and this is the one that I love, the profit principle number 5, because when you think about spending money on paid search and Google ads and how does it work, the concept behind it, you changed my mindset for my business when we had this conversation, and that's you're not spending your own money.
Yeah. So a lot of people get hung up on a budget, like you said earlier. I'm only spending $5,000 this month, or $10,000, or $15,000. Where that number comes from, I don't know. But once you understand the concept that any money you're spending on search is not your money, it's your customer's money. So if you think about it logically, you spend money to secure a job from Google. Maybe it costs you $100 or $200. You go out, you run that call, you collect money from the customer, you put the money in the bank. 30 days later, you pay Google. Well, whose money have you used? You're not using your kids' college fund. You're not using cash from your business. You're simply using your customer's money. Mm-hmm. You're taking a small amount of those gross margin dollars you've got from that job, putting it aside, and at the end of the month, you're giving some of it to Google. So at no point are you really spending your own money. So having an arbitrary budget doesn't really make that much sense, because you're not having to set aside money for this program.
Right.
You're limiting your budget based on some arbitrary number that really has no relevance to anything.
Right. And well, you told the story before when we were here, you guys were in your financial meeting, and your accountant or the CFO was looking at the number line. I don't want to say the numbers. That's for you if you want to say it or not. But yeah, it was a big number. But you looked at the line. It was like, well, that's more than we spent last year or any year possible. But you flipped it and showed him something else.
Yeah, I said, yes, our paid search was very high this month, but let's compare it to last year. We spent a lot more money on paid search, but we produced a lot more gross margin dollars, which translated to net profit dollars. So yes, the line item on our income statement for paid search was way higher than it was the year before or even the month before, but so were our gross margin dollars, and so was our net profit. So again, that number is irrelevant. It only matters that it's producing gross margin dollars, which translate to net income dollars. So I don't really care what this number is for paid search, as long as it's producing gross margin dollars.
Right. And I think
Does that make sense?
yeah, no, it definitely does. And I think some people still might have, and I always think about the mindset of some business owners. I mean, like most business owners in the trades are they're a technician turned business owner, and they don't have the educational backing of some of this stuff, which is, by the way, completely fine, but you need to learn it. So when you look at this idea of not spending other people's money and this not really having a budget, looking at capacity, I think this scares some people. This concept is scary.
Yeah.
What do you say to the person that is scared by this type of a concept and the things that we're talking about so far?
Well, that's why it's so important to understand these principles. Like, really understand the game you're playing. Like, setting arbitrary caps on your budget, setting rigid caps on your, what you'll pay for a job, thinking that you're spending your own money, so you're setting a cap on that. If you don't understand these principles, it's all scary, because it's a lot of money and you're not really understanding, is it working, and how should I be thinking about this? So if you want to play this game and you want to play it at a high level, you have to understand these principles. You can't get freaked out about budgets, and you can't get freaked out, about, how much money I'm spending. So understanding these principles is paramount to understanding how to play the paid search game.
Well, and the other thing too, I think people sometimes have an over-reliance on what paid search can do for their business. They think it's going to fill up everything miraculously, but that's actually profit principle number 6, right? And that's how many jobs should paid search fill?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So oftentimes, you'll see companies that paid search, they want paid search to fill their entire schedule. Oh my God, my schedule is empty. We need to do better with our paid search. Well, if you're trying to fill more than 20% of your schedule with paid search, you've got a problem. Like, you can't, because they're so expensive, right? You can't fill your entire schedule with paid search. It just, the numbers won't work. It's too expensive. It throws everything off. If you should only be trying to fill 20, maximum 30% of your schedule with paid search. Those marginal jobs, after your overhead is covered, like your other marketing programs need to be able to fill 70-80% of your schedule, break even, make a small profit even, and then all of the paid search jobs are just gravy, are just bonus. It cannot be the bulk of your marketing strategy. It can't fill the bulk of your schedule. That's asking too much. That's not what it's really good at. It's not what it's designed for. It's too expensive. But if you limit it to your 20% of your schedule, it can be extremely profitable for all the reasons we've talked about, right? All those jobs become, marginally more profitable. It's very flexible. You can target the right jobs. You can get them when you want. All of that is good and very profitable, but it can't fill 80% of your schedule. Like, it just won't work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, because again, that's the numbers, right? When you look back at how that works. And so now, there's a variety of different ways that people can manage these profit principles, but I want to talk first a little bit about the operational quagmire that I think some people find themselves in when it comes to dealing with a marketing company. Because, well, I'm a marketing company, you're an HVAC company, and sometimes, I mean, you understand it, so you get it, right? I think there's a misconception of, okay, well, I'm spending this money on Google Ads, and I want to get my lower cost per lead, yada yada yada. Well, they blame the marketing company. We get the shit end of the stick for basically everything, which sucks because we're talking 20% of the schedule here, right? But if you have nothing on the board, well, you got to look yourself in the mirror. I mean, that's part of it. But looking at the marketing company's job versus the business's job, my end of things, I look at it as saying, okay, there's leading indicators for me. Like if I'm looking at paid search, click-through rate. What's that? What's our impression share? Are we showing up in the top part of Google? Now, how many people are clicking through that? Now, if the click-through rate isn't high enough, now I'm going to optimize the creative, right? And then once we've optimized the creative to get a click-through rate, we're going to send them to the landing page. We're going to try to get a conversion rate off that landing page to making sure that it's adequate. And if it's not good, we're going to change the conversion rate on the landing page or the text on the landing page to optimize for the conversion rate. And then we're going to send the lead, and we want to focus on the cost per lead or cost per qualified lead, really, for that matter. Yeah. And after I send you that lead, a good lead, bad lead, whatever lead, a lead is sent to you and your team answers it, my job is technically done as a marketing company.
Correct.
Right? Now it comes on the business. I know we have a document, you have a document. I mean, we talked on the 7 points of the marketing company side of things. There's like 18 in terms of the operations side. We don't need to go through all 18. But I remember when we sat down there, you said, hey, here's an example of 2 different paths that I can go down, right? Looking at the operational side of things to make sure that we're making the most return on what we're spending for our paid search. Walk us through some of that.
Yeah, so just to back up a little bit, I find a lot of times the business owners want to focus on your part of the business. Yes. Why are these leads so expensive? Let's go back and talk about the conversion rates and the click-through rates and all of that, which is fine, but that's your job. What they really need to focus on is their operations. Like you say, you turn the lead over to me. Our job as a company is to get the most value out of that lead in order to make the whole thing profitable. So, yes, say the lead is $100. Of course, I'd rather pay $80. Let's talk about that, Thad. But that's not the end all be all of making this profitable. What do I do with that lead and how do my operations handle it is way more important than figuring out how to get that lead for $20 less or maybe it's $20 more. It's kind of irrelevant at that point. We need to take that lead and make the most out of it. So you need to answer your phone properly. You got to be booking at 80%. If you're booking at 60%, if your call center is booking at 60%, you're probably dead in the water before you start. There's probably really no way you can make those calls profitable. You got to book the call at 80%. You've got to get a tech out there that can set leads and close repairs. You've got to turn those leads over to a comfort advisor that can close at, those leads at 60, 70, 80%. And if you're not doing, and you've got to have a high average ticket, you've got to get it installed, you've got to collect the money. If your operations are working fine, if you're hitting all of those targets, the fact that you paid $150 or $130 or $170 for that lead almost becomes irrelevant. It kind of becomes a rounding error. But yet everybody wants to focus on how do we get cheaper leads? We all want cheaper leads. But what we really need to do is refine our operations to make those leads profitable. Mm-hmm. So that's where the operations comes in. It's way more important than, trying to get a lead for $20 less. We all want that.
Yeah, everybody does. I want that too. Of course. Yes.
But it doesn't really matter if your operations aren't performing and you're not getting the most from them leads. You can hardly buy that lead cheap enough to make it profitable unless your operations are on point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. And so you think about the average cost per acquisition, customer acquisition cost, so some people call it CAC for short. And when you look at the customer acquisition, this isn't my data, by the way. This is a company called Searchlight. They've honed in and pulled back a lot of data on Google Ads. They found that the average customer acquisition cost from Google Ads paid search was about $400, give or take customer acquisition cost. Yeah. So you think about that. If you're looking, I know we were talking Service Titan and your opportunity cost and your blended ticket. If you look into your Service Titan or your HealthScope Pro or your WorkEase or whatever you're using, and you look at a blended ticket, that is $500 or $600, but yet you want to spend money on Google Ads that have a customer acquisition cost of $400. Now, this is average across the board. If you have well dialed in operations, you might be able to get that down to 200, in my opinion. If you have well-oiled operations, that's the biggest piece. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. So now you look at this saying, okay, well, I have a $500 average ticket or $600 average ticket, but you're spending $400 to acquire clients.
It's not going to work.
It's not going to work. And so now you look and say, okay, well, maybe I've got $1,000 or $1,200 or a $1,700 blended ticket, whatever your numbers look into. Now you can say, I can make this work.
Right. So yeah, like so let's say your blended average ticket is $1,000 to make, and which most residential businesses should be somewhere around that range. But let's use $1,000. 50% gross margin, you've got $500 gross margin dollars. Well, how much are you willing to pay for that job? Assuming your overhead's covered, right? That's a big assumption, but you have to have that assumption. You can go out and run this call, make $500 in gross margin dollars. Well, how much are you willing to spend for that? Is $100 too much? Is 120? Is 140? 80 would be better.
Right.
But you see how it becomes almost irrelevant because there's so much gross margin dollars there that you want that job, regardless of whether it's $20 more or $20 less. Again, why would you set a budget there? Why would you be rigid? You just spend what you need to spend to get that job.
To those profit principles.
So don't get hung up on, I'm not paying more than $100 for a job. Why? There's $500 available and you only want to spend 100. Would you spend 120? Yes, of course you would. Would you spend 150? Yes, of course you would. But you have to understand that principle, right? You have to understand how profitable those marginal jobs really are to get your mind around spending a little bit more to secure it.
Correct.
Okay?
Yeah. And some people are thinking, well, shit, that's a lot of like, we're talking capacities and adjusting budgets up and down. Well, do I have to have my marketing company do that? Well, I mean, sure. Yes, right. Or you have a dedicated person in the office that understands that, looking at the capacity and adjusting it and working with the marketing company, or if you're doing it in-house, et cetera. It's a lot of work for one person to do.
It is.
Wouldn't it be nice if there's some form of software out there that could be able to do that?
Yes, it would, Pat. Yes, it would. I mean, all of these profit principles, adjusting your budget, bidding up and down, monitoring your capacity. Do I need more jobs today? Do I need them tomorrow? How much am I willing to spend for them? All of that. If you think about it, software is ideally situated to solve all of those problems. And I think this is where you want to introduce.
This is where I want to introduce Profit Fail. Yeah.
So wouldn't it be nice if there was some software that could do all of this without someone having to monitor it, your schedule, adjust the bids and all of that. So,
spoiler alert, there is Profit Fail. Profit Fail is what I want to do here for everybody is I want to walk through. I mean, we've obviously provided you guys enough value that I think it's only prudent that we talk a little bit about Profit Fail and what Bruce has on the go with that, and in conjunction with On Purpose Media, to be able to help you dial in these 6 profit principles, but with AI and software, so you don't have to take a lot of man hours out of, or I guess people hours out of being politically correct here, taking people hours out to be able to do this. It's all just done automated and affecting those. So let's walk through how Profit Fail helps out with these 6 profit principles. So profit principle number 1, back to it, understand how and when profits are made in your business. How does Profit Fail enhance that?
Well, it basically understands that those last marginal jobs, those 20% of calls you need today or in the next couple of days, are extremely profitable, and it's vitally important that you fill those. So when it sees those jobs not being filled, it starts to raise the bidding. It starts to get more aggressive. It starts to turn on different campaigns. It starts to figure out it needs to do whatever we've got to do in order to fill that schedule. Because filling the schedule is priority number 1, right? Mm-hmm. Getting them for the least amount of dollars is obviously priority number 2, but priority number 1 is we need to fill this schedule. So it can read your schedule, understands how urgent it is to fill those last spots, and starts to bid aggressively in order to do that. And it does that automatically. You don't have to adjust the budgets. You don't have to monitor your capacity. It does all that.
Caveat is that you need to be on Service Titan adjustable capacity planning currently.
Currently, yes.
Currently. There's other ones that are in the works, but right now it's Service Titan adjustable capacity planning to be able to do that. So, and again, it does it automatically, which is the best part, raises it up, raises it down. Now, that's also kind of profit principle number 2 is being flexible with the budget as well. It already does that budget thing, that concept that you talked about earlier of, hey, would you spend 120 or 150? Not being married to that $300 per day example that we gave earlier, or whatever the number was from before, is saying it goes up, it goes down, it does what it needs to do. But the other part that I like, and I'm kind of stealing your thunder on this one, because I love this part of profit fill, is that if you know that you're booked out, if the capacity isn't there for you to take those calls over the next 2 days because you're booked out, it just reduces it right down. Throttles it way down. You're not spending money on it, right?
You don't even have to think about it. It just takes the bidding down to a point where it's no longer, showing up for searches. So
because it doesn't pause. You don't want to pause your ads and then turn them back on. That's bad.
So turning your ads off when you're full is critically important, but increasing your bids when you need to fill the schedule is also important. So sometimes it's going to spend more money. Sometimes it's going to spend no money. And at all times, it's always looking for the lowest cost job to keep your schedule full. And it's making adjustments, sometimes hundreds of times a day on bids to try and figure out where that best balance is. But know that its number one job is to keep your schedule full.
People don't have a marketing problem, they have a capacity problem, I think was the words that you used on that. So, which is, I couldn't remember the first part. I know it's the capacity part. So, but again, profit principle number 3, don't overbook. I think we've already kind of alluded to that, is that we've covered that, is that the software doesn't allow you to overbook because it reads the schedule and does it automatically. And I think profit principle number 4, not all jobs are created equal.
Yeah, so again, I think we talked a little bit about that. Given, you've got a few spots left on your schedule, you want to fill those spots with the most profitable jobs or the highest ticket job. Profit fill does that. It says, okay, we only need a few jobs here to fill. It turns the best campaigns on, the highest targeted campaigns, what it feels is the highest ticket potential jobs. It starts with those and tries to fill your schedule with that. And then, of course, if you need more and more jobs, it has to start expanding out and looking for potentially less and less profitable jobs. But it's always looking for the most profitable job first to fill your schedule. And it does that automatically. You don't have to think about it. Should I turn this campaign on? Should I turn that one off?
Should I target this area? Should I target this area?
That area, this older area, this newer. So it's doing all of that for you based on different algorithms and revenue attribution.
Yeah, and it learns your data too and what you're looking for with inside of it. So which is, I just love that part because of like the zip code thing. I told this to somebody the other day. I'm like, yeah, wouldn't you rather target, if an AI learns your data, your algorithms in a sense, and says, okay, well, you're actually making a lot of money from these zip codes. Why don't we just target more of those zip codes to try to fill your schedule more when you can, right? And again, the algorithm does that and allows to be able to do that because now you can make more money because of profit principle number 5, not spending your own money, which I think we've already covered. I don't think we need to even go over that one.
Like, don't get hung up on a budget. It's not your money. It's your customer's money.
Right. Yeah. And then the last one is that how many jobs should search engine marketing or paid ads fill? I think we've already covered how profit fill can really do that. It adjusts up and down based off of what your capacity allows for.
Yeah, and then of course, I mean, the way it can sort of stop from filling 40, 50, 60% of your schedule is we do have a red stop button, which is a total budget. Like if you do want, I mean, you don't want to literally just have an unlimited budget because your schedule, it will fill your schedule, and you don't want it to fill more than 20 or 30%. So the hard stop on that is a total budget, but it's based on, well, if I spend this much money, the most it's going to fill is 20 or 30% of my schedule. So that's the relationship to your budget. You don't want to give it enough budget that it could potentially fill 50, 60, 70% of your schedule, because now you're going to be unprofitable or possibly be unprofitable. So it does solve that problem too with a hard stop on your overall budget. But we encourage our clients to set that budget very, very high so it absolutely fills your schedule first as priority number 1. but there is a hard stop on your budget. So that's how it keeps that, under control, where it's not trying to fill 20 or more than 20 or 30% of your schedule. Does that make sense?
Makes tons of sense. So look, if you guys want to know more, there's a landing page called onpurposemedia.ca/profit fill that you're going to want to go look at. That's how you can book a call with myself to talk about Profit Fill. Of course, we want to check them out at profitfill.com. You want to check them out? Profitfill.com. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything that you think that we've missed? Is there anything that you just want to get off your chest to the general populace of running a contracting business?
They need to understand these profit principles if they're going to spend any significant amount of money on Google Ads paid search.
Define a significant amount of money.
Everything's a significant amount of money. They need to understand, in order to even play the AdWords game, the Google Ads game, they need to understand these profit principles. They need to understand how profitable it can be if you play the game right and understand these profit principles. It can be a wonderful tool.
Got him, that dang mute button. That is the conclusion of the conversation that Bruce and I had a little while ago on the 6 profit principles. Of course, if you want to have a recap of this, you probably took some notes, but guess what? We got a handout here for you. So text profit handout, that's the word, profit handout, to 719-824-1377. You can get that. The other option is if you go to onpurposemedia.ca/profit handout. Was that one word? Did I put one word? No, profit handout. So onpurposemedia.ca/profit handout is the other way that you can get that. So you can either text it, you can go to those two, and get there from there. So it is, of course, some people had texted in a couple questions. One of them, they answered it later on in there. They said, hey, don't worry about that. So again, if you got any questions, by the way, you can put those in the comment. You can text them to that number right here as well. You can ask your question. So one of the questions, let me just pull it up here. So that was asked was how do you know, let me get it here. Do you pay like obviously paying for PPC to get the direct lead? And in other words, you're putting PPC ads out there for furnace or heat pump leads. That is correct. And so the difference, and so this person, we asked a couple more questions back and forth, is using primarily SEO and Facebook ads, and they haven't actually used Google ads or PPC ads. Now, I'm assuming that since you're on this webinar, you have a general inclination of what PPC is. If you don't, then I'm going to explain it here a little bit. So the PPC, so it's when you go to Google and you type AC repair, for example, or plumber near me, you're going to see Google local service ads, the Google guaranteed, that's that green check mark. Then you're going to see the Google ads or PPC or pay-per-click or search engine marketing down below that. Sometimes in the Google Maps rankings, you're going to see a sponsored ad in there as well. And so those two are your Google pay-per-click. Generally speaking, you are targeting your repair type work from Google ads. Generally speaking, again, I'm going to go in a general. You can do other things. You can do some of the installs. You can do definitely branding. Again, branding depends. That actually is another question I was asked. Do I do branding ads for this? But when you look at that AC repair, you have that breakdown. That's where people are searching. They're already know that they need their product. Their air conditioner is broken. Their furnace isn't working. It's hot outside. It's cold outside. I need service now. Most times in most markets, if their furnace or their conditioner isn't working, well, guess what's going to happen? They're going to call. They're going to need somebody, but they're not going to wait. Okay. This is the other thing. They're not going to wait if your schedule's full. And that's that key thing about this profit principles, that understand your schedules and your capacities. The Facebook side of things, you can drum up tune-ups, repairs, installs. You can do some repair, but people aren't going to go to Facebook and say AC repair near me. It just doesn't do that, right? It's a disruption in terms of that, and putting and introducing the problem into somebody. Generally speaking, 3% of the market at any given time, it knows they have a problem. Okay, they know they have a problem, and they're actively seeking out a solution for that problem. 3% of the time, 17% of that's the people that are AC repair near me. Their stuff's not working. 17% of the time, generally speaking, people are know they have a problem, and they're information gathering for a solution. Why is my furnace blowing cold air? Why is my air conditioner blowing warm air? Why does my air conditioner make a clicking noise? Why does my kitchen faucet dripping? They're gathering this information because they see the problem. The other 20% of people know they have a problem and they are not actively seeking out a solution. Okay, they see something that's wrong in their house and they're just ignoring it. 60% of people don't have a problem, don't know they have a problem, and don't know that there's a solution out there. 80% of that marketing, okay, the Facebook part of things targets that 80% of those people. Okay, Google targets the other 20% of those people most of the time, generally speaking. So that's kind of how you break that down a little bit. One of the other questions is, okay, can I use Google Ads and PPC for branded keywords? Yes and no. It kind of depends on where your business is at, in my opinion, if people are targeting your company name or not. Okay. If people are targeting your company name, and you can just do this by not in your office, but random places throughout the city, searching your business name, see what comes up. Are there competitors that are bidding on your company name? If so, you probably should spend money on branded traffic. That's if somebody searches, in this case, Action Furnace. If they search Action Furnace and a competitor showing up there, well, Action Furnace would then have to spend money on branded keywords to be able to show up so other people aren't trying to steal their customers. Make sense? Okay. Now, conversely, if you don't have people searching your name and you search that and nobody ever shows up, nobody ever shows up, probably don't need to spend money on a branded keyword campaign, because it's just a waste, right? You don't need that. So, all right. Great question here. How does a small business doing just under 2 million a year make a jump from a small budget PPC to a larger campaign? Great question, Jason, in terms of that. And so this is the question: how does a small business doing just under 2 million a year make a jump from a small budget to a budget PPC to a larger campaign? It really is capacity. Right? When you think about this, and it goes back to what Bruce talked about in terms of that capacity, when you have 10%, 10 to 20% of your capacity. So generally, if you have, I'm going to use air conditioning and heating, that's general theme of this. You can kind of interchange where your guys are at. Generally, it's 3 calls per tech per day. Generally, some people run 4. Okay. But 3 is kind of a safer number to do. 3 calls per tech per day. If you're running 4, you can run the math. Okay. So if you have 3 calls per tech per day and you have 22 working days in a month, and so that's 3 times 22, that's 66 calls in a day. Are you maximizing the entirety of that repair tech's schedule? This is assuming that they're just a repair tech. They flip the leads over. You have somebody else come in. Obviously, if they're selling tech, it might be a little bit lower, it might be a little bit higher. I'm going in generalities here. Okay, 66 calls per day or per month, not including overtime, not including weekends. So you have to now look at that to say, okay, well, are we hitting every single one of those calls? Are we getting 66 calls on the board? Once you're starting to get to that point where you're filling your schedule, now you hire another tech. When you hire that other tech, you might actually have to increase your budget a little bit to be able to say, okay, well, I'm going to maybe go after 30, 40% of my calls from PPC because I know that I need to fill the schedule of the guy's just going to sit there. Okay. As they start to fill up and as you start to grow in your SEO and as you start to grow in referrals and as you start to grow in your other marketing, you can then reduce that down to that 10 to 20% of your PPC. You rinse, lather, and you repeat. It's all about your demand in terms of going to that larger campaign. So looking at your business, if you're under 2 million a year and you have 2 techs, well, looking at your percentage of that. And so you can actually reverse it backwards to say customer acquisition cost, Searchlight's data, $400 customer acquisition cost from Google Ads. We see that a little bit lower. But generally speaking, I mean, good operations can get that down to $200. Can be even a little bit lower in some markets. But you think about this, people are like, what? $200 customer acquisition cost from Google Ads? Yeah. You think about this, $50 to $70 per click for the most competitive keywords in the height of summer. AC repair, it's a $50 click. 3 people, 1 in 3 people generally convert from that click. $150 right there. That's convert, by the way, calling you. And then you have to book them. So if your booking rate's only 50%, it's $300. See the math? If your booking rate's 80%, well, that's a lot lower. Now $70, you get up to the 400. So we can see that a little bit lower. So looking at your budget to see what you have, I mean, you don't need to beat yourself up if you want to be spending 10 grand a month. Well, but you don't have the text to be able to do that. It doesn't make any sense to spend it. Hopefully that answers your question. In terms of Action Furnace, do they have an investor? I honestly don't know. I believe he's been at it for a long time. I don't believe they have an investor. At this point, there is a couple business owners and business partners inside of the business. That is a question that, Jason, since I have your info, I will ask them and get back to you on that one. So a couple great questions that we had there. So if anybody has any other questions, drop them now. I'll give it a couple minutes just to see in terms of another one comes into the text line. By the way, if you are watching this on a replay at some other point in time and you're like, ooh, I had this question. Well, guess what? Just text me at this number. I know I'm keeping that profit thing up there. That's the handout. 719-824-1377. So at any point in time, you have a question about Google Ads, SEO, websites, heck, anything in marketing whatsoever, 719-824-1377. Text that number. We will respond back to your question. Okay. Unless it's at 3 a.m., then I probably won't. Well, maybe unless I can't sleep. But anyways, text that. We'll get you your questions. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you on our next webinar at the end of May. Topics still to be determined, but we are going to be running these. We're going to be bringing it back. We're going to be running one every single month. So thank you for tuning in to the 6 Principles to Make Your PPC Better, the Profit Principles webinar. See you soon.
If you like what you heard today, you can hit us up and get a marketing analysis done on your business to know if you're on pace or if you're off pace. Head on to the link that's on your screen, onpurposemedia.ca/marketing-analysis. Book a time with us and we'll go over and give you all of the details, no obligations, by the way, on whether your marketing is on point or whether it's not. Of course, we also want to see you on our socials. We got our Facebook, we got our Instagram, we got our Threads, we got our TikTok. Give us a follow.